On this video, I want to go ahead and use what we've learned so far and actually do some math problems with it. So, the first problem that you see is a sine of 5 over 6 pi. Now, this really means what is our y, because sine represents y in a unit circle, when you're at 5 over 6 pi. And as we talked about in class, you see how our problem has pi in it. So your answer won't have pi's in it because your question in itself is asking for you to find y point at 5 over 6 pi. So we're going to utilize our two strategies that we talked about before. The first question that we're going to answer is that where are we? Okay, where are we? On our quadrant. Okay, we see that this is over 6 pi, which means we know this, though here's 1 pi, we know this has to be 6 over 6 pi, and on the other side has to be 12 over 6 pi, and I'm going to indicate those two things so that way we can define where 5 over 6 is. We know that 5 over 6 has to be before 6 over 6, so therefore our quadrant that we'll be looking at will be right here somewhere. Now, once we figure that out, we also need to figure out what type of triangle this is. Okay, so that was our step number 2. Our step number 2 was to figure out what are our coordinate points for those. Since this starts with 6, that's the biggest number that can go on your denominator of a triangle, we know that on my square root it's going to start with the biggest number, which is 3, and the second one will be 1. Now let's watch for our sign. Since we're on the second quadrant, we know that x has to be negative since x is on the left side, and y has to be positive, so we know this has to be negative right here. Now once we get here, the question itself was asking for what is y at here. So we are here, and our y point at this point is root 1 over 2, or if you would like to just write it as 1 over 2, you're also okay with that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and recap. Your question itself had pi in it, so they already gave you where you are. So therefore you had to look for what they were asking for, which was just y point of that. Good. Now let's go ahead and do another practice that's kind of the opposite of what they're asking us to do. So how about this one? How about cosine of theta equals root 3 over 2. Now if you look at this question in comparison to the first one that we saw, we see that this question itself does not have pi in it, so we're missing theta. So this is what we're looking for, and usually in pre-cal and AP Cal we're going to refer to the thetas, the angles, with the radian measures. Now let's see what they gave us. Before we go on, kind of like what we did before, we know that cosine, I kind of want that to be red. Alright, we know that cosine represents x, and we know that this number right here is a positive number. Okay, we found those two facts because that's going to help us to find where we are once again. So on our quadrants, we realize that x is positive, so on my x-axis, for x to be positive, it needs to be on the right side. So I'm going to highlight the entire right side. So my things has to be on the right side somewhere. Now we have to decide whether or not if this is a triangle. So let's take a look at what they gave us. Is something over 2 is root 3 over 2. So this is something that was in our triangle, as we saw on a prior video or on your foldables that we made in class. So this one is a triangle. So my triangles are going to be on the quadrants looking somewhat like this. Okay. Now, based on our cheat sheet, so I'm going to cheat right here. So my x has to have root 3 over 2. So which one of these 3 things, so which one of these 3 things does our x have root 3 on it? It would be the over 6 one. So I know both of these should have over 6's on it based on our little cheat sheet. Okay, now since we're once again talking about over 6, this one right here is the first one of the quadrant. It's on the first quadrant, so it always has to be 1 over 6. And so on the right hand side is 12 over 6 pi. So the one down below has to be 11 over 6 pi. So in this case, my theta, or thetas, would be 1 over 6 pi and 11 over 6 pi. So those are two ways that we are working on this. So I want you to go ahead and make this clear. So if you're looking for, well, if they gave you pi, your answer doesn't need to have a pi in it. If you don't have a pi within the problem, just like number 2, your answers are going to be in pi's or radians, in the lamest term possible. So go ahead and take a look at it, and on the next video, we'll kind of kick it up a notch.